Great. It looks like we are connected to one another. Amazing. Hello, everyone. My name is Ginger Gosnell-Myers. Welcome to our event tonight. To get us started, I'm going to hand the technical microphone over to Erin Nelson Moody to welcome us to this event and welcome you to this project. Erin.
Siam, Captioning to know Siam and CI. My name is Erin Nelson Moody in English. I'm Tsleil-Waututh. I'm from the Squamish Nation. This is kind of an unusual thing, not just introducing ourselves into conferences, but also over Zoom, and also when we're in different locations. We don't really have an ancient protocol for it. So perhaps what I can offer is a paddle song. It's the kind of thing Corey and I would sing as we were paddling into someone's territory, into someone's house. And it's maybe we're meeting in that very same way. We're coming with humility, with pride in our family, with all the expertise that we bring, and in the spirit of working together. So that's a bit of what's wrapped up into this song, introducing ourselves to other people as we enter our house. Oh, no. I believe I just saw one of our dear Musqueam relatives in the Zoom box here earlier. So shout out to Crystal Sparrow, dear friend of ours and very talented artist as well. I can only really speak for my village or my family, and there's many nations represented here. So just in the spirit of time, like I hope that offering a paddle song is just a way we introduce ourselves, and I know that many other people have songs to introduce themselves. And given more time, we would have everyone sing and introduce themselves and their families. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the help with the technical challenges I've had this evening. And it's good to be here. OCM.
OCM, thank you, Erin, so much. Thank you for not asking me to sing. You're so much better at it than I am. It feels so good to hear you start us off in such a good way. And your involvement in this project has been really crucial. I'm looking forward to sharing some of the stories about the West End area with folks later on today. We are all here for the launch of a long-awaited project, the West End Community Hub. It's a number of very crucial neighborhood supports in the West End area. And tonight's event is an introduction to the launch of this planning process. I am an Indigenous engagement consultant on this project with the HCMA team and with Susanna Lyon-Hawes. And we're incredibly thankful to be working with the City of Vancouver and the Park Board and the Fire Hall and the library and all of the neighborhood associations, and especially the incredible artists and knowledge holders that we're going to be introducing you to tonight. when we thought about starting this planning process for the West End Community Hub, it became very apparent that there was significant Coast Salish knowledge that needed to be brought in to this project early on so that we could all be guided towards a strong community center where everyone could feel welcome and supported. And so through this process, we're going to be creating a vision through learning Coast Salish perspectives of the West End area, or the area now known as the West End area. Everyone throughout this process is going to be contributing to these early stages of a planning process for this much needed facility. And we know, because this project has been a long time in the making, that many of you have ideas about how the new site could look or be used. And we're really looking forward to hearing your ideas. But we want to start us off by framing and rooting our understanding and connect with Coast Salish knowledge of this place and really understand how to create a proper vision of this center together. In the winter, we're going to continue to dig into these discussions about the programming and about the spaces. And I'll leave it at that for now as an introduction. I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Susanna.
Thank you, Ginger, and welcome everyone. Thank you, Ginger, and welcome everyone. And thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. My name is Susanna Haas-Lyons, as Ginger said, and I'm part of the team that's helping to create opportunities for us all to learn, connect, share what's important to us, and in this fall time, really create a vision for the future community hub. And so tonight, we're doing our welcome. You'll hear a little bit about the project, and then we'll spend a good chunk of time hearing some Coast Salish stories of the West End. And then we'll go into breakout rooms and reflect on what we've heard. And this is a pretty essential part of the evening, because as Ginger was talking about, what we're trying to do is create opportunities for co-learning. What can we uncover through deeper connections to help guide what this community hub could look like? So I'm really looking forward to that. And then after we do that, you'll get a preview of some beautiful art that is being created by our Coast Salish and community West End artists that you'll also get a chance to see over the duration of the project. And then we'll talk about what some of the next steps are. But before we dig into the evening, I do want to just provide a happy greeting to those who are celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is a festival celebrated by many people from countries in Asia. And as you can see in this image, at this time, the moon is at its brightest and fullest size, coinciding with the harvest and the middle of autumn, and people celebrate often with lanterns and moon cakes, delicious things. And so if you're part of a family or you yourself are celebrating, we wish you just a wonderful holiday at this time. And as we're getting into the event, you'll notice as you came in, the session is being recorded. And if you would like to have closed captioning to assist with your participation, and you can't see it yet, along the bottom of your screen, there should be an option to choose live, select live transcript, or if you can't see it, try more, and then click show subtitle. If you're having any questions about that part or any other technologies, please do add it into the chat, and our team will do our best to support you. And then last thing I'll say is, we've all learned, many different skills about being together in these virtual spaces. And I just want to invite you, if you're comfortable, to turn on your video so that our speakers are speaking to the faces of this community. But there's no pressure at all, and choose what works for you. But of course, we can see one of the ways to find out who's here, all of us, almost 100 of us, so is we'd like to do a little poll. So hopefully on your screen, you saw some questions come up, and we have 3 questions for you. The first one is about which of these have you done in the West End in the last year? And check all that apply. Do you live there? Do you work, including remotely? See friends, shop, go to school, including remotely, although that's changed for folks this fall. None of these or something else. Secondly, as you scroll down, you'll see a second question. If you're currently a West End resident, how long have you lived there? And if you have any trouble with the poll, just put something in chat. We'll do our best to support you. So if you're currently a West End resident, how long have you lived there? If you're not a resident, indicate that, or indicate how many years you have lived here. And then lastly, we're curious about your age. And the reason we're asking this is just one measure of looking for what is the diversity of the community and making sure we are really involving a range of people. And so if you would do us the pleasure of answering that, and this is totally anonymous, so we won't tell what your age is if you're kind enough to share it with us. But of course, if you prefer not to say, that is totally fine as well. So let's see, we're at about 3/4 of us have participated. So I'll just give you a couple more minutes to take a look, and we'll have a chance to see about, how are people engaging with the West End? And if you're a resident, how long we've been a resident, and what our ages are. I'm still trickling in, so I'm not going to rush in. But if you are celebrating the Mid-Autumn Festival, or also, I guess, there's some people may be celebrating Sďwx if you are of the Jewish faith. Some people may be celebrating other holidays that are happening at this time. If there's anything you want to share about that, you can pop that into the chat. We'd love to hear about it. Okay, I'm going to close the poll here. And so hopefully you'll be able to see the results. Give me a thumbs up if you can see them. Yeah. Yes, great. Thank you. So in terms of what have we done on the West End the last year, a good portion of us, 70% of us live in the West End. 82% of us see friends. About 80% of us shop. So shopping, seeing friends, and living are all probably the most activities we're doing. 60% of us work in the West End, including remotely. About 10% of us go to school, and a quarter of us do something else in the West End. So if you're able to find the chat, we'd love to hear what's that something else you're doing in the West End. In terms of West End residents, about 30% of us are not residents. And then quarter of us have lived in the West End for 11 to 20 years, so long-term residents, 20%, 3 to 10 years, 15% over 20 years. And then we know the West End also has a good turnover of people coming through. And we see that here, about 15% of us have lived here for 2 or more years, 2 or fewer years, pardon me. And then our age ranges, we have a nice mix between 30 to 60, about 20 to 25% of us fall into that category, and then a whole wide mix there. So thank you very much for answering that question, and also for using the chat to tell us other things you're doing, like eating and leisure activities and faith-based activities. This is wonderful. Thank you so much. At this point, I'd like to pass it over to our project partners to do a welcome. And our speaker will be Danica Djurovic, who's the Director of Facilities Planning and Development with the City of Vancouver. She's an architect, and in her role with the city, her focus has been on the planning and development of city-owned buildings. And she spends the majority of her time on planning, engagement, and development of community buildings, such as community centers, childcare, libraries, and cultural and social spaces. So we are very lucky to have her on this project team. Over to you. Anson, you may need to speak. Okay, great.
Now it's good. Yeah, I was trying to unmute. Thank you so much, Susanna and Aaron, for starting us off, and Ginger as well, in a good spirits. And I want to welcome everyone on behalf of the partners on this project. Obviously, I'm representing City of Vancouver, and we also have important partners on this site: Vancouver School Board, Vancouver Park Board, Vancouver Library Board, as well as Community Center Association that is jointly programming and operating Community Center. So again, we are so happy you found some time to contribute to our process. And I wanted to also acknowledge ancestral territory of the First Nations, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and thank them for welcoming us, feeling us very welcomed, and being really patient with us, sharing their teachings. And I'm looking forward to this event to learn more. And we are super excited to start off this project in a good spirit, as this community has been growing significantly. I was lucky enough to be living there 30 years ago. It was a different community then, much growth and much need has been happening over time. So these are very hardworking facilities, and we definitely need to look to redevelop them and acknowledging all the growth, community growth and needs. There is a significant opportunity for us to not only accommodate significant community needs, anything from social, cultural, recreational, educational, and everything else, but also to really do so in continuing stewardship that First Nations have had on this land for centuries and immemorial, and to really be grounded in those teachings and understand this land better and take better care of it. So very excited to have you all here with us, and I'm thanking our guests tonight for sharing the knowledge that we all are looking forward to learning. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Danica. And to all our project partners, thank you for making this project a priority. So for those of you that are maybe just hearing about this project, perhaps for the first time tonight, we're going to give just a brief overview so that you can integrate this information as we do the work tonight. And so the first thing I'd like to just talk about is that the project purpose overall. And what we're trying to do with this project, and we're calling it Reconnect, is to develop a plan to renew and expand the buildings and outdoor spaces at the site. That includes the West End Community Center, King George Secondary School, Joe Fortes Library, and other important facilities. You can see an image of that there. And this project is really building on previous work. We know that much conversation has been had and already good plans have been established. And so we are integrating those, including the West End Community Plan, the Vancouver School Board Long Range Facilities Plan, the Vancouver Public Library Strategic Plan, and Van Play. And as Danica mentioned, there are a number of organizations part of this. There's the City of Vancouver, there's the Vancouver School Board, there's the Public Library, there's the Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation, as well as the West End Community Center Association. And to dig in a little bit to the site, there's sort of three key assets here, plus other potential amenities. There's the West End Community Center. And the intention here is to replace it to meet the needs of the growing West End neighborhood, including the renewal of an ice rink. And with Joe Fortes Public Library, it's a very well-used branch. Many of you have probably spent time there, whether to take out books or use it as a meeting place or a place to work. And it needs a larger library space. And then King George Secondary School, it will be redeveloped to provide more spaces for students, and also to meet seismic upgrade requirements. Now, other potential amenities may be part of this site. The renewed community hub will likely have combined and shared programming spaces, which means that there might be flex spaces that can be used amongst different users. Other potential uses that could serve the West End could be considered for either addition or expansion. Might be a relocation of the West End Fire Hall, childcare facilities, spaces for seniors, arts and culture facilities, and other things that emerge as priorities as we engage with the community over the next year or so. And so the timeline for this project is right now we're developing our vision and principles. And I think often we all, at least I know I do, I kind of get in and I'm like, here's the things I'd like to see, but actually we want to slow down and we want to root in understandings of Indigenous histories and contemporary uses of this space or of the West End. And we also want to spend some time thinking about what is essential about the West End and what does that say to us about the vision for this place. And so we want to spend some time really thinking, answering the question, the future West End Community Hub will be a place that what? And that's the work we're doing this fall. Then in the winter, we're going to spend some time including a survey where you get to identify the programming spaces and the user needs and all those things to really identify how people will use the spaces, both indoors and outdoors. Then in the spring, the team will put together some initial options for how the community hub could look. And we know that there are a lot of desired uses for a constrained site. And so we'll get a chance to play with it and see how these pieces can be mixed together and get your input, and then revise those options. And then in the summertime, come back with, okay, this is what the community said, this is what it could look like. And then in the fall, come up with a final plan that will be shared publicly and submitted to the project partners. And what we're trying to create here is a plan for renewal. It's not an architectural plan. It's not the kind of the detailed, like how many benches and seats and all those things that'll come in the next round. We really want to think about kind of what could this space be. Actually, I think that kind of covers that. So then I talked about what we're doing here is creating a shared vision, that future we hope to create. And I want to spend some time on this because this is the work we're doing this fall, is to really think about the purpose and the aspirations and what are the principles? What are our goals? What are our strategies to take to achieve this future and a long range view? So how that's going to look over the fall is that, first of all, we're starting with some inspiration this evening, but also throughout the workshops, you'll hear from artists, both our Coast Salish artists as well as our community artists, so we can deepen our connection to these lands. And then we're going to gather your experiences of the neighborhood. There's an online survey called the West End Experiences Survey, and we want to, at workshops and online, gather those experiences. And then at our workshops, we'll look at the stories that have been submitted, and we'll actually read one another's experiences of the West End and use that to explore what does that mean about what this community hub could be. And then, of course, we'll return that back to you as in a shared vision and get your feedback on it and make some revisions as we go. Ginger, over to you.
Thank you, Susanna. We want to highlight how important it is to look at every opportunity at creating new civic facilities around Vancouver, to root that in our commitment to advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. We're not just prioritizing Indigenous engagement in this project, we're using this as an opportunity to learn from one another. And so we built in co-learning opportunities by bringing in Coast Salish artists. We're connecting with Coast Salish knowledge holders like Aaron Nelson Moody, who we heard from earlier. We're also bringing in youth mentees into this project so that we have this intergenerational learning between the artists and their mentors and the next generation. How is that going to turn out in informing the vision for this project? Well, this isn't just a normal community center. It is rooted in a very important area to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And so we have brought in some pretty incredible artists to help us throughout this project. We brought in 3 Coast Salish project associates, Corey Douglas from the Squamish Nation. He's a West End resident. He's an architectural technologist, and he is also a Coast Salish artist. So, sorry, civil engineer and architectural technologist. Then we have Angela George, who's from the Squamish Nation and living in the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, where she lives and works. She is a Coast Salish weaver, and she is also an artist. We also have Crystal Sparrow from the Musqueam First Nation, who is a Coast Salish artist and a carver. We are using this as an opportunity to learn stories and knowledge from this land. And we want you to be inspired by these stories, and we want you to carry this knowledge and these stories with you when you're thinking about what the next stages of this planning process and the center will look like. And so to do this, we are going to be hosting a number of We Connect events, 2 of which are being hosted next week. We have 8 themed workshops, and we also have one opportunity to review the shared vision that we're going to be co-creating through this process. And Susanna, I'll hand it to you.
Sure. Okay. Well, there's so as Ginger was saying, we have a number of opportunities. And actually, just before I do that, I just want to mention, of course, that we have, in addition to our co-Salish artists, we have 2 community artists that we're so excited about, that they're contributing to the Reconnect events, who are also offering reflection of the West End for us to digest and engage with, and then a chance to help kind of engage with what the community is putting forward. And so our artists are Sgsmåþkvə, who's a multimedia artist and a former West End resident for many years, as well as Ken Bosom, who's a writer, artist, pop culture historian, comic cartoonist, and a West End resident. So we're going to give you a preview of these 5 artists' work at the end of tonight's session. And as Ginger was saying, we hope that this will be only the beginning of your involvement. Next week, we have 2 community workshops, one in person, and due to COVID protocols, it's a limited number of people who can attend our in-person events. So if you have registered and you can't make it, please do let us know so we can make a spot available for someone else. And then a number of online workshops. So 2 next week, they're just general visioning workshops, and then 8 themed workshops throughout October, and 1 in November around justice, equity, and diversity and inclusion, health and wellness, education, arts and culture, seniors, children, youth, and families, a workshop just for Indigenous peoples, and as well as a workshop on lifelong learning in public spaces. So please come to the workshops. If that's not your thing, there's going to be engagement boards throughout the community, at the community center, at the library, at the aquatic center, in front of Gordon Neighborhood House. Come check it out. Fill out some of the cards, look for us at pop-up events, and then fill out the West End Experiences survey online to help shape this, this place. So that's a little bit about the project. And now let's learn a little bit more about the West End. Oh, actually, one thing I'll say before I pass it back over to you, Ginger, is that, so I mentioned that we're going to have breakout rooms to talk about what we're hearing, and that and you've heard that co-learning is really the root of what we're doing here. And so I encourage you, as you start to hear these Indigenous perspectives of these lands, to please listen with purpose, to look for the insights, for the stories. How can we take our learning to a deeper level? And we're going to answer, we're going to ask you to reflect on later, what ideas from tonight do you want to keep in mind as we plan the future West End Community Hub? And are there any ideas that inspired you? So as you listen, to think, what can we take forward with us? Thank you. Over to you, Ginger.
I would like to welcome Crystal Sparrow to our event. I'm going to provide the digital microphone over to Crystal so that she can introduce herself and introduce her story. We've created videos based on the artwork and the stories that we're going to be sharing throughout this process. So Crystal, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself, and then you can introduce your video.
There we go. It says I wasn't allowed to unmute. Great. Thank you so much, Ginger. And it's been really great to see all of this shared in regards to this project. Yeah, so I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Crystal Sparrow. I'm from the Musqueam First Nations. I am a co-Salish artist. I was traditionally mentored at a very young age, and I mainly work in public projects now, and I also work on other projects that are working with youth and kind of exploring ancient skills like hide tanning and working with salmon skin. Yeah, so this project means a lot in regards to thinking about not just Musqueam, but the 3 nations. I thought it would be really important to have the 3 nations as a part of my work. I designed Cedar Mother. It's a sculptural concept of stories that are of plants, medicines, Cedar Mother really signifying this symbolic being of Mother Nature that connects all 3 of us people to the West End. And behind that, I also thought of a time when all 3 nations were gathered in the West End, and they were collecting medicines together. They were having conversations. They were talking about, the seasons. They were talking about, fishing and taking care of their families. It really brought me back to the past and also thinking about the present. I think of where the West End is and how our Three Nations are not living there. They're not in that space, but we do attend that area by going to Stanley Park, or we go visit, or we go shop. So for me, my piece was really around thinking of the Three Nations and thinking of how we're still connected there, and also that curiosity of people who live in that community to think about a time when we were all living there. This would be the Three Nations, and how we're now coming back as a way of sharing stories.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Let's play her video.
Yeah, so I started to think of the West End as an opportunity to share the strong relationships between the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, as I felt it was really important to identify that all three of us, that our people have been here. And in the West End, I started to envision that there was this past time when our people would gather medicines and shellfish. They would meet together. And so the West End really became an opportunity for me to look in the past and also to look in the present day, that all Three Nations, we are all still working together very, very strongly, and we're building stronger relationships. I designed Cedar Mother as a way to signify the commonality of the use of red cedar, and how all three of our people made longhouses, carved canoes, carved artwork, weave baskets. Another part of the weaving that I thought of was cedar roots. I had heard from my great aunt Jerry Sparrow that she would collect cedar roots in Stanley Park with her mother, and it was a very important event. And going out and being in Stanley Park, it looked much different, she said. It was also very special, as it was working together. It was collecting these cedar roots and to make these beautiful cedar baskets. So the project really, for me, started to evolve into more of a symbolic sculpture of Cedar Mother, and that would include the different elements. So the shellfish, the water, the English Bay, thinking of the waterways, thinking of salmon, which I also felt was very important to include, as it's a strong connection and a very important part of the Coast Salish people. It's a part of our life, in our food source, as a way to celebrate and as a way to pass on teachings. As I come from a family of fishermen, I'm a fourth generation fisherwoman, very proud of that. And so then it moved into the medicines. So I mentioned that medicines were collected, here in Stanley Park and on the west side at one time. And medicine can still be collected today in Stanley Park. So the medicine elements really started to form in my work. I also thought of animals. I thought of beautiful hummingbirds as you know, nature is also very important. And I just really felt that the red cedar of Cedar Mother really symbolized everything and could capture that in this beautiful sculpture, but could really tell a story with other stories all weaved in this piece as a way to celebrate, as a way to acknowledge the three nations, as a way to signify and mark our existence here. We're still here. We've always been here. And it's very important that we start to see more artwork. We start to hear more stories that are, weaved into these pieces, whether they be cedar baskets, or their wool weavings, or their beautiful carvings, or their, jewelry and things like that. That I think it's really important that the city of Vancouver really starts to see the importance of having artwork not only as markers, as house posts and beautiful weavings, but also to have these structures that are going up in buildings and these new infrastructures of different communities that are starting to pop up, that we see Coast Salish art being shared in a way that's respectful, but it's also very visible, because I think the most important part of Coast Salish people and non-First Nations people here, let's just say in Vancouver, is that there's visibility. And I think that also creates the opportunity for us to start sharing conversation, asking questions, and learning new things as a way of building stronger relationships here on the West End and within Metro Vancouver.
That's great. Yeah. There was so much more that I said, and I was really happy that it was really condensed down, because there's so much to say, but you kind of want to keep it a little bit more, I guess not really contained, but for people to understand a bit of what this bigger story is, just to have a piece of that. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, well, Crystal, people are going to be joining you in a workshop very soon to really get into, understanding, the inspiration behind the creation of Cedar Mother, and being able to talk about, connecting to the stories of the West End area, and all of the knowledge that you really put into the artwork. And I don't think it's clear, but you're making a carving of this artwork. And so what people are seeing is a graphic element of a carving that you're working on for Cedar Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's going to be pretty incredible to see. I do have one question for you, if I can squeeze this in, because you did ask us to ask questions. And we often don't hear about how Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh are distinct communities, and their usage of the West End area has been different, and you're coming together in relationship, is a really significant effort in community building, and you're really rooted in understanding what those connections are, and yet keeping the distinct stories separate and honoring them.
Mm-hmm. So your question is, what do I think about our differences? Oops, sorry. Uh-oh, just one sec.
we have a heckler coming in at the most appropriate time.
Inside the door. Thanks. Thank you. Oh, that was perfect timing.
That was
delivered. They were early. So.
Oh wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So your question is, the three nations. We are distinctive. Yes, we do have our own stories, and we do have, I know that the Musqueam and Squamish have different dialects in our language. They're not exactly the same, and people might think they are because we're from, you know, the same kind of location within Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, North Van and whatnot. I think for me as an artist, and also as a young artist, still learning quite a bit, is that I'm very respectful in being mindful about what I share about my perspective. I don't share stories from my family or from things I've heard without asking. And there are different but similar teachings and stories about Metro Vancouver and different locations. So I agree that the Three Nations have their own stories, and some are in same places. And there's, you know, there's this meaning behind that, or there's this teaching behind that. So as an artist, I'm just really respectful of that. And I think there's so much learning for the First Nations across Turtle Island. It's like our stories and our teachings and our language and our art, it's just coming from the ground up, and it's coming through medicines, it's coming through airways, it's coming through the water. So there's so much teachings that are still coming. And so I don't think that anybody is more knowledgeable than somebody else.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You know, I think all of your work in reconnecting to so many different cultural artistic practices, you know, of the Musqueam people, of the Coast Salish art forms in so many different ways. It's pretty inspiring to see. And I know you put a lot of work and a lot of effort into understanding the stories of all the areas around Vancouver. And I thank you for that. And I thank you for your time on this project, and for a lot of the guidance and wisdom that you're going to be sharing with us to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next artist and project associate is Corey Douglas. Corey Douglas is from the Squamish Nation and is also of Haida ancestry. And we're very lucky to have him with us in this project. We have many conversations about the impact of the West End Community Hub project. Corey has been pretty incredible in bringing Aaron Nelson Moody onto this project with us as well. And Corey, I just want to hand the microphone over to you to introduce yourself and Aaron, and then we're going to play your video. Well, Aaron's video.
This has been super exciting. You know, having been living in the West End for as long as I have, I think it's been about 17 years now. You know, we're seeing all kinds of development happening in our within our territory. And,
Corey, I'm just gonna jump in here. You're sounding a little bit like you're underwater.
Oh, okay.
Maybe plug in and unplug again, or reconnect, or. Aaron, you were talking.
Is that better?
Oh, you sound great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you know, I've been in the West End now for about 17 years, and, you know, seeing, you know, all kinds of activity happening in our West End Community Center, and seeing very little in the way of cultural content has been pretty challenging. So, you know, to be participating in a project of this scale is super exciting. And, you know, participating at this level and this early of a project is really fun. You know, coming in as an artist right now is the start of, you know, hopefully a long time commitment with the West End Community Center. And I could not pass up the opportunity to bring Aaron Nelson Moody. And, you know, he's been very kind and generous in sharing his knowledge with me over the course of my life of being a young aspiring Coast Salish artist. And We haven't had this opportunity to work together on a project of this scale, and I'm just really happy to have had this chance to work with Aaron. Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah. Should we play the video? Should we play Aaron's video?
Certainly.
I'm
All
Aaron
right.
Nelson Moody. Neith Quinn Toxin Yaquala Tinsna, Tina Chandla Chiakamas, Qui Hamots and xʷməthkվəy. I'm from the Squamish Nation, and my name is Aaron Nelson Moody. We have stories of the two-headed snake in Squamish, and actually many nations have a similar story. I think the intent behind this piece, the idea behind it, this version of the story, is people overcoming hard times and coming together as one people, and maybe the resilience of going through those hard times together inspired us to want to overcome them. Everyone had some motivation to pull together and to connect with each other. So, most of the versions of this story that I've heard talk about how we overcame this supernatural threat that was, affecting all of our people and keeping us apart, and helped us to unify as what we think of as the Squamish peoples. The part of our territory where this piece is going up, we have these histories of, I don't know how you call them, like tunnels, almost like people would go under the world and come back up in other places. It's almost like supernatural portals from one place to another. And that area had one of these places where we could travel, vast distances quickly. And in the story, this is one of the places where the young man who we sent out to fight the serpent, where he popped up at one point during his early life when he was still training. So for us, it's a powerful place. It's a significant place. It's a spiritual place, and we want to mark the passage of this young man, even that he passed through that place on his journey, in his larger journey. In this particular story, means that it's significant. And in this case, when he passed through this place, he was being trained by the Seal people. The Seal people kind of adopted him and looked after him for a year and trained him. They took them off to their house and then brought him back. And this is one of the places he passed through. So yeah, it's a significant place for our people. Well, I know that many local peoples, many local Salish peoples have a similar version of the story, or another version of the story, or another piece of the story that we weren't aware of. But there's people up and down the coast who have stories of the two-headed serpent, the two-headed snake as well. And I've talked to some of my northern family. They didn't realize we carried that story as well. So hopefully when any of our elders walk by this place, when any of our children walk by this place, they'll have this, hopefully they'll have this feeling of pride that we're showcasing our beautiful culture that for so long, it was a little bit dormant. People never got to see it in their daily lives. So I hope it evokes all kinds of wonder and curiosity and pride.
Thank you.
It is pretty powerful, Aaron, to hear that this area has a lot of spiritual significance, a lot of supernatural significance too. If there's no better word for I think describing the power behind a lot of these supernatural beings that we just don't see in our lives today. And when talking with Corey about creating this artwork, he shared that there were other elements of the story that weren't for public knowledge. And I think, as the Squamish peoples are relearning a lot of these stories, learning about the important historical connections to these lands and the different areas around the city of Vancouver, it's important for people to know that while it's important to share this knowledge amongst Squamish peoples, pass the knowledge down to the next generation, not everybody can learn everything. And I'm wondering if you could talk about some of the knowledge that are just for your community, And how do you share that sensitive knowledge, like this particular story with the portals and the two-headed serpent, with the public?
Yeah, in terms of, speaking to the general public, we want to speak in a way that they can understand. So, there's serpent stories all over the world. There's old Celtic stories. There's stories up coast. There's many places have a similar story. It's in some ways it's not that we don't share them with the public. It's just we share them with who earns them. So some people, go to our longhouses. They go to our elders, and they establish the kind of relationship where we're willing to share a bit more in depth, with these stories. So actually, almost anyone can earn those stories. It's just not everyone takes the time, and not everyone builds the relationships of trust and mutual responsibility. Sometimes people just want to take our stories and publish it and even copyright it outside of our use. And there's other people who come in a very good way, and they really earn their teachings, and they earn their place in ceremony, and they can be from anywhere in the world. We have kind of I was just listening to Crystal talk, and she carries a lot of knowledge. And I was thinking while she was talking about how we carry our history. We call witnesses. So if we're doing a work, ceremonial work, we'll call witnesses from many nations. We want as many diverse people as possible to carry our history. So all the guests, especially if they're from far away, we ask them to be like a living page of our history book. And of course, they see the events of the ceremony differently. They have different history, different culture, different language even, and they would see it and understand it and speak to it differently. So of course we look at that place and we have many, many, many stories. There's actually a lot of supernatural stories from that place, but it's also the place where before there was a bridge, Mary Capilano used to walk across the Narrows, walk through the mud with her baskets and sell baskets to the people of Vancouver. So it represents that early trade that so many of our Indigenous women were the first to engage in. It's one of the first places where we started to have commerce with the outside world. It was all strong Salish women who carried that economy. It's one of the places where when Stanley Park was still an island, we put up our mortuary boxes, right where there's a seawall now. It's important to us for that reason also. There was a couple of village sites there, and it turns out I didn't think about this when I was speaking to Corey, but I was actually born there and lived there as a baby. And my father used to walk around on the beach with me. It's a little bit before my clear memories, but yeah, I guess I was an inhabitant of the west side as well, West End. Yeah, there's lots of stories, but as Crystal said, sometimes we'd be there for different reasons. I might be there picking berries, and another time of the year she might be pulling cedar bark, or maybe we'd meet each other up and fish for clams or something. So there's many, many uses from before we were sort of shoehorned into what we think of ourselves as different nations now. We were relatives, and of course we respected each other's differences in our own houses, but first and foremost we were relatives to each other. We go on all day. It's a lot to talk about. There's like every Squamish person you talk about a different story, but thank you. And it's excruciating watching myself being filmed by the way.
I can listen to Squamish people all day as well. I hear you. And Corey, you hold Aaron up so highly, and it's obvious why. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing those stories with us. It's a real privilege, and I hope that we carry them forward as witnesses in a really respectful way and a really thoughtful way. And for Corey, I think, being able to learn from Aaron, being able to bring other Squamish young people into these processes to learn from you, learning from Aaron, that is an important value that needs to be brought forward into all of these projects where we're learning and sharing and connecting. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the importance of being able to connect with someone as knowledgeable and I think generous as Aaron, to learn about a lot of these stories, to be able to be inspired and create artwork that reflects, you know, the knowledge of the West End area, and then to be able to, I think, share that with young people.
You know, it's honestly, it's so much fun. I think Aaron and I, when we sit down and talk about a project and get through details, we get lost in time. What could probably take us 5 or 10 minutes to do generally takes about 2 to 3 hours sometimes. But you know, it's this wealth of knowledge that Aaron's able to share with me, and you know, even going beyond just this mentorship program or this mentorship relationship that Aaron and I have. You know, it's also bridging that gap to an architectural and building industry that has shaped our traditional territory. You know, it's this same level of knowledge that is required of Aaron and I to participate in a project of this scale, to bring strong cultural content to a community that was once our home. So, you know, this mentorship is beyond, you know, just stepping a little bit further in the peripheral. That, you know, being able to again share this knowledge with our neighbors, and you know, Ginger, you and I have talked many times offline on a separate kind of initiative, and that's a mentorship program. It's a needed, it's necessary. You know, we're looking at opportunities to create that as a realistic requirement on projects of this scale. You know, I can't echo that enough. I can't repeat that enough of how important it is, you know, to help reshape our traditional territory to be reflective of Coast Salish culture. What does that look like? I don't know just yet, but you know, all this good work that we're doing on the West End Community Center can be repeated a number of times to bring strong cultural content to help bring Coast Salish back to the forefront within our own Coast Salish territory. So I want to acknowledge Aaron again for his participation. You know, I'm always knocking on his door. I'm super excited to sit down any chance that I have with him. And if there's ever an opportunity that I can share my architectural and engineering kind of background with Aaron, then, you know, I'd happily do the same. Thank you, Ginger.
Thank you, Corey. One of the comments that we have in the chat here is about using Indigenous place names, teaching people about the Indigenous place names. We know that the West End has a lot of these names that we think people might be interested in reviving and using again, and learning some of these names and readopting them, taking some pride and a lot of this richness that has been covered up due to the history of colonization, which a lot of Canadians are learning about, sometimes for the first time. But, you know, there's this, I think, interest based on mutual respect and understanding that there are many names for these places that deserve to be daylighted again. Aaron, I'm wondering if you have any comments on bringing Indigenous names back to Vancouver areas and the West End in particular.
I love the intent. It's a little challenging. You know, if it was the place where I fished for clams, say, and the place where Crystal picked berries, we would have different names for the same place. And that's, you know, that's between nations, but it's even in Squamish. It took us, when we had first amalgamated our 16 villages, our chiefs argued for 2 years about what to call the common places just in Squamish territory, because all of our villages had different names for the same place. So it's a wonderful intent, but there may be some other ideas we could use Indigenous names for, like it's a place of bulrush, it's a place of berries, it's a, you know, maybe something that we would share as you know, the three nations, and that the general public could engage in. There was a Squamish place name that literally meant place of fallen tree across creek, and 1,000 years after that creek, that log washed away, and we were still calling it that, you know, and it's, you know, it's not possible for the general public to engage in something like that. That now doesn't make any sense. But I love the intent. You know, I love putting, you know, the words out there so people can kind of wrestle with our crazy pronunciations and try to figure out why we spell things that way. I really enjoy that. It is a little problematic. You know, of course, you know, we love seeing the artwork up and we love seeing the names on signs. But in some ways we want to go a little bit deeper. You know, if it was a place where our people engaged in, you know, our first engagement into the modern economy, perhaps there could be some room, you know, made for Indigenous economy today. If it was a place where we gathered resources historically, you know, that's still so very necessary for our people. I think Squamish, we only have about 0.4% of our traditional territory left to us, and it's hard to sustain even a modern poverty level versus the kind of wealth our people had here historically. So you know, I love it. Let's start with those things and go a little bit deeper as well.
Mm-hmm. It's going to take work, and us coming together and figuring out what will work and how it can. And yes, building consensus in our own communities isn't that easy either. So let's build in some time to, you know, bring those dialogues, you know, at a community level into these processes as well. Yeah, thank you for that. Corey, you know, last word to you on bringing Coast Salish identity back to these places through stories and design, and what the future for sharing this could mean for places like the West End Community Center, which, you know, hopefully is the sign of more to come.
Yeah, you're right. I think, I mean, one of the things that I generally talk about when it comes to the architectural and building industry is how it's shaped our traditional territory. You walk through the city of Vancouver, there's very little in the way of content that is reflective of MST being host nations. And in my humble opinion, it's just not enough. So when it comes to projects like this, the West End Community Center that has a very deep-rooted history to the MST communities, Indigenous content, cultural content, both architecturally, landscaping, structurally, you know, interior design, you know, there's a number of opportunities there, and there's so many canvases for us to kind of play with. What is this material? What do these materials look like? How do they interact with the local culture as well? I mean, there's endless possibilities. And there's tons of room for Coast Salish culture to be integrated in all of those disciplines. And you know, I hope that there's going to be space made in this particular project going forward. And there's a lot of aspiring artists like myself that are willing to participate along the way, and we're inspired. We're still very, very inspired to participate. Thank you, Ginger.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. Thank you both. I think we'll carry the knowledge of the West End as a place for supernatural portals for the Squamish peoples, and learning more about what that means and how that could be applied to this future building, as well as the reality of the area being a significant economic hub driven by Coast Salish women. I think that's an important narrative that needs to be daylighted and could absolutely be brought into this project. So thank you for that inspiration as well. And of course, we're going to hear more from you, Corey, in the future at some of these community workshops, where folks will have an opportunity to dig into, you know, understanding this a little bit further and then applying it to creating the vision for this project. So we're looking forward to seeing you again. Yeah, thank you. Our next artist and knowledge holder unfortunately could not join us tonight. And so we're going to share a video from Gabriel George from the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. This is Gabe George talking about the incredible artwork and weaving created by Angela George, who has done significant work in reviving the craft of Coast Salish weaving and using weaving as a method to demonstrate Tsleil-Waututh laws fascinating, just absolutely fascinating to learn more about this process. So if we can play Gabe's video.
Gabriel George, Sgsmåxwch, Tnitsanat, Athnats, Antha, Tsleil-Waututh, xʷməthkվəy. I'm Gabriel George, and I'm a member of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. So this story in particular, I learned from my late father, Leonard George. And he said that his father, my grandfather, Chief Dan George, referred to our people, sometimes the Tsleil-Waututh people, as the people of the sunset. And he said, my late grandfather said it was his father that every day he'd tiwish to Sgsmåxwx. He had a prayer to the sun. He would give thanks to the sun every day, thanking the sun for coming today, thanking the sun for warming his children, and asking the sun to come again tomorrow. And then my grandfather used to sing that prayer sometimes. He would sing it, and he kept that going. And in our language, the Sgsmåxwx is our word for sun, and it's an important to our people every day. My late great grandfather had this prayer to the sun and giving thanks to the light and energy and blessings of the sun. And so, you know, when I found myself on the western parts of our territory, the western parts of Burrard Inlet, or even here where our reserve is, you know, you look to the west and most of what you see is water. And when you see that sun go down on the water, you understand what my grandfather was talking about. Or if you're out, like I said, on the western parts of our territory, you know, in around English Bay or Stanley Park and those areas, and you watch the sun go down, you know, there's something in that moment that it brings you somewhere else, or it brings you a feeling, you know. Even when you go down there today, I think about my late great grandfather being there and praying like that as the sun's going down into the horizon, you know, on the water. And today you still go there and you'll see, you know, hundreds of, sometimes thousands of Vancouverites down on the beach there and watching the sun go down and just enjoying that special time of day. So even though it's something that comes from way back, I don't think, you know, that feeling or that gravity to that pull to go and watch the sunset, it's still there. So this piece in particular that was woven by Ange, it captures that moment, you know. When I shared the story, part of what I expressed is, you know, when you stand down there on the beach, particularly near the West End, and that was an area for our people that was, you know, there's a lot of those streets that are in the West End and in the downtown core of Vancouver were hunting trails for our people. So it was a significant area. But when you go out onto the water there in the West End and you watch the sun go down, you know, even here, every day it's different colors that you'll see. But it's always something that it's showing, that nature is showing us through the vibrance and the colors. And I think that Ange has more than captured the spirit of that feeling in that moment. And when I see that weaving, it brings me to that moment and that brightness and that, you know, also it's the end of a day. I hope that for those that see it, that the artwork, you know, just gives them a time to, and the space to reflect and take in what they see. And I think it's important, you know, there's so much going on in our world now, and there's so much that happens in such a short time that it's also important to be mindful and to be grounded. And I think that for me, when you behold art, it's important to do that. And for myself, you know, when I behold this creation that Angela has made from part of our family's history, you know, I think about our xʷməthkվəy, our ancestors who came before us and who endured so much, but yet we're standing in that spot, that beach, watching the same sunset that I'm watching. And so there's a feeling of continuity. And then I look back to my Xwmaq. Xwmaq in our language is our descendants. And that can be anyone in our family that's younger than us, the ones that are living and the ones yet to come. And I know that they will behold the sunset as well. And so, you know, in our journey, in our time, as we're warmed by the sun, we have to make the best of it, not only for ourselves, but with that remembrance of our ancestors and hopefully leaving behind something that is better for our Xwmaq.
Pretty incredible learning to hear that Chief Jan George would refer to the Tsleil-Waututh peoples as the sunset people, just based on their proximity from the West End area now. And because of the direction of the sunset as it hits the Tsleil-Waututh community. So again, learning the significance of this area and its inspiration that really defined, you know, a culture and a community that we're still able to learn about. Incredible. The other thing that we learned is that Chief Dan George composed a sunset prayer song in recognition of this. And so Gabe has shared the sunset prayer song with us, and we're going to be putting this up on the website at a later date. And of course, we're going to be bringing Ange in to talk more about her incredible weaving that was inspired from the West End area and its relationship with the Tsleil-Waututh people. So looking forward to seeing some of you there if you've signed up for that. And of course, we're incredibly disappointed that they weren't able to join us, but again, thankful that their presence was shared through this video and of course, this amazing artwork. And we're going to be showing you Corey's artwork, Crystal's artwork, and Angela's artwork again with our other community artists towards the end of our time with you. Susanna, I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
I want to raise my hands in appreciation to all of you for that incredible sharing of those perspectives. I feel both grateful for the richness that it offers this project and for my own personal inspiration that I felt in listening to these teachings and these perspectives. So thank you really very much. You'll see in the chat that Aiden's putting in some links to find out more about the host nations and their stories. And also, as Ginger mentioned, the Shape Your City /WeConnect webpage will have these videos if you wanted to watch them again and other materials to come. So what we want to do now is the work. We heard these perspectives from our Coast Salish communities, and now we want to think, what does that mean for us as we go forward to plan this community hub, this place of learning, of leisure, of exercise, of connecting, of being together. And so we were going to ask you to think about what are the ideas from tonight that you want to keep in mind as we plan the future West End Community Hub? What inspired you? And so we'll break out into small groups. And if you've not experienced this before, in a moment, we'll press the magic button and you'll look like your screen will almost be closing, but fear not. And you will enter into a smaller room of people. And in each of these rooms, there is a member of the project team who will be responsible for taking notes. So thank you to the project team members for making sure that we're capturing this discussion. And I'll share with you the link in a moment so that you can all, actually anybody who wants to is welcome to put notes in as you talk. But just in case you don't get there yourself, just so you can see what it looks like, is that, so we're asking you to discuss what ideas from tonight do you want to keep in mind as we plan the future West End Community Hub, and what inspired you from what you heard. And so the notes will go in there. You can submit as many times as you like. It may be, I'll just show you the second screen, if you have a Google account, you may see something like this, like your email address here, but it's not shared. We are not going to be able to see who's submitting this information, so your information is not being collected. They do that so that you could come back to it, I think. And so if you'll do me the favor, if you open up your chat, if it's not already open, you'll see the instructions that you can refer to when you get into your group. So you'll choose someone to take notes. And in fact, luckily, we've got project team members to do that. And then you'll go around, and I encourage you to do a round of introductions, to share your name, your relationship with the West End. I'm a long-term resident, I'm somebody who works there, whatever that is, just one or two things about your relationship with the West End, and choose one question to respond to, and go around and do your introductions that way, jumping right into the discussion. And you'll see the link there if you want to submit the content. So we are going to reconvene at 8:45. So that's about 26 minutes of discussion. So Anson, if you set the timer for 25, and then you'll have a 1-minute countdown. If you need anything while you're in the discussion groups, along that bottom navigation bar that has your mute and stop video pieces, and Anson will have to allow to make sure everybody can unmute themselves right before we go in, there's also a ask for help button, I think, in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you need anything, just press that button and we'll come. We look forward very much to hearing what you want to bring forward from these perspectives that were shared. Enjoy your discussion, and we'll see you in about 25 minutes. We're talking about important ideas from our discussion, the need to create spaces to eat together, dance together, learn more about the history of the local First Nations, to foster collective responsibility with the truth and reconciliation calls to action, intergenerational central hearth as the heart of the center with an active storytelling focus, empowering youth to work on projects that are meaningful to them, Indigenous sports and youth programming. Being here that the community hub could be there could be a better pathway for between the outdoor spaces and to allow for active movement on foot, bike, mobility scooters and wheelchairs. Thinking about incorporating Indigenous culture into the architectural landscape of the West End, making sure that the leadership of these efforts is not tokenistic, but actually Indigenous representation in a holistic way of planning the hub, and making sure that Indigenous peoples are compensated for that work. Accessible spaces, nature was and remains, to have reverence for it, to make sure that we recognize that this place has been a meeting place for many nations for time immemorial. How can the community hub integrate that? Learning to be together post-COVID, we have to heal. And how can this place that we heard tonight is a place of meeting where there was commerce and trading and relationship? How can the community hub continue to foster that? And some suggestions here of like different ways to name the space. And I'll just recognize that there's a lot that'll be happening around naming. Right now we're using the West End, and most of the time we're using small c, small h community hub. It's just a way of thinking about there's a lot of different components that'll be integrated into this space, but it'll have its proper naming process. Who knows, maybe even some of the facilities may be renamed as we go through this. Ultimately we're doing our best here to ensure that both the process and the outcome are opportunities to support reconciliation and to do this in meaningful ways. And so this is the beginning of that. And we will continue to come back to these stories again and again, and continue to make meaning of what can we learn from the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations as we plan this space for us to be together. So thank you. We have just a couple more things to do. We want to give you a little bit of, like, we talked about the art. We want to share that with you. We want to get a little bit of feedback. This is our first of 10 events over the next 5 weeks. So we'd love to just get your feedback about it. So stick with us for another 10 minutes. And over to you, Ginger.
Well, it's over to someone to show the artwork.
That is me. I will do that.
Thank you, Susanna. we're looking at planning this center differently. And, you know, it's pretty incredible to be able to root our first steps in understanding the stories of this place, understanding the importance and significance of this space, and recognizing that through artwork, what better way to understand stories and to be inspired than through artwork. And so I've forgotten who the first artist in artwork is that we're going to see. Oh yes, Sunset People by Angela George. So yes, incredibly privileged to have this beautiful, colorful sunset representing how Chief Dan George has identified the Tsleil-Waututh people and having that as a significant connection directly to the West End area. Thank you so much, Angela George, who cannot be with us tonight. Of course, Cedar Mother, the beautiful artwork by Crystal Sparrow, which is in process of becoming a cedar carving, representing the many stories and usages and medicines of the area by the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I cannot wait to see the final result, and I'm super inspired by this. Of course, I'm one of Crystal's biggest fans. And of course, strength in community. This incredibly powerful artwork by Corey Douglas, representing a story that is based on a portal, a spiritual and supernatural portal that has been in the West End since time immemorial, and has many different stories coming forward from it. And how enjoyable was it to just listen to Aaron Nelson Moody tell us a little bit more about this area, and of course seeing Corey share this through this powerful image. We don't just have Coast Salish artists with us, we have many talented West End community artists who are working with us on this project. And when we ask them to find stories that inspired them, that demonstrate their connection to the West End area, of course, this beautiful piece by Ken Bosem. Just incredible to see the connection of the four directions. Susanna, I'm wondering if you're able to share some of the story behind Ken's piece here.
I don't want to, and Ken's actually here, and Ken, I would normally pass it over to you, but I also am kind of careful around how much time we have. But Ken, if you want to unmute and maybe say a couple sentences about this, we'd love to hear from you.
I'll give a quick Reader's Digest rundown. The idea with the piece actually stems from a story that came to me from an Indigenous man who I had met through and became friends with through frequent visits to Little Sisters when I worked there. That relates to building a nest and getting comfy in it as part of the bigger story. But it basically is my vision of the West End as sort of a nest for community. And it's a crow's nest. And part of the story is also about a relationship I developed with crow families in the West End. So I think I'm down to about the third generation of one crow family that I have a sort of connection with. And so the colors of the eggs represent the different colors of the pride flag, the current pride flag. And the banding of teal you see is, I noticed crows in an urban environment will actually grab whatever to make their nest with. Sometimes it's zip straps, sometimes it's what have. So the sort of teal aqua colored banding is meant to represent that element, but also to sort of represent the water that surrounds us on three sides, and also the Trinity that we sort of have talked about through the evening. I hope that was fast enough.
You win the award for both meaningful and quick. Thank you.
And of course, this piece, which I'm seeing for the first time today by the incredibly talented Sgsmåþ, who's a multimedia artist. And it looks like this piece is textiles.
Yeah, and I'll say just very quickly that this is a story of a place that begins long before we arrive. We're thinking about here Joe Fortes, who was born in 1863 and died in 1992, the Trinidadian-born local hero after whom the community center is named. And so this talks quite a bit about you can see here some of the themes that are important to us today: marginalization, resilience, resistance, and bonds that form in times of upheaval. And so you'll hear more from Sgsmåþ and Ken and our three co-Salish artists at these workshops.
Absolutely incredible. We're so lucky to have Ken and Sgsmåþ with us on this journey. How great is it that we're going to be building a community center using artwork and inspiration as our guide forward? Thank you so much, and looking forward to learning more and hearing more about your incredible artwork and stories and getting inspired from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just two last things we want to say here is, one is, please join us for the ongoing conversation. So this is going to be a different process than many of us participate in normally. Normally we'll sort of start and say, I'd like to see this and this and this, right? Really using our heads to list off our individual desires. And yet we're doing reconciliation in both outcomes and process. And so we're starting with stories, our West End experiences, the stories and perspectives of the Coast Salish people. And so in all these workshops, that's what we'll be doing, is sharing stories and exploring one another's stories. So 2 workshops. The one that's online next week still has plenty of space. That I believe that the in-person one has been sold out. But essentially, we're doing the same kind of work throughout all these workshops. Some will have specific themes and some will be more general, but you can do it on your own pace. You can do it online, the West End Experiences Survey. We're going to report back on the vision and have a public information session. So we're really looking forward to your participation. So one last thing we'd like from you is tell us a little bit about your experience tonight. A few questions should pop up here. And was this meeting a good use of your time? To what extent do you agree to disagree? Were you able to express your views or ideas? I know we did a lot of listening, but there was also a chance to share. Did you learn from others, from our speakers, from the people you're with in the small groups? And then we also want to know about your experience with the technology. Did everything work? Did you have any challenges? So this is, did you experience, the last question is, did you experience any challenges with the technology? Registration on Eventbrite, finding the link to access the meeting, using Zoom, hearing or seeing the presentation. And I will totally take accountability for the first one. There was that black box over there. Thank you to everyone who told me there was. My apologies. But I think there was also maybe some audio pieces. The Zoom polls, using, of course, if the Zoom polls didn't work, you might not be able to answer this question, using the input form during small groups or something else. And if it was something else, please take a minute and let us know in chat. And also I'll put into the chat, if you like, we'd love your other kinds of feedback too, if you have any advice for us for future WeConnect events. So with that, I'll leave the poll open. I know some of us are still answering, and also invite you to use the chat to share any advice and to share your gratitude to our speakers. Thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. Thank you for sharing with us some perspectives of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, which I know that we are all so hungry to learn, and we are very grateful for it. Ginger, over to you to close the meeting.
Yep. Thank you to our knowledge holders, Aaron Nelson Moody, Gabriel George, Crystal Sparrow, to Corey Douglas, to Angela George, to Sgsmåþ, to Ken Boseman, to the City of Vancouver team and the HCMA team, and all of you for joining us tonight. Incredibly privileged to witness all of this. So that's it. Maybe I missed something, but a million thank yous.
Yes, very.
Can I say I have a million OCMs? millions of OCMs to give to everybody. Aaron, I see you laughing. No, you can't say that. Yeah, okay, you're saying I can say that. Millions of OCMs for everybody.
Thank you all, and have a wonderful evening. Anybody in the project team who wants to stick around for a debrief, please go ahead. And we'll reconvene in probably about 3 minutes. Good night, everyone. See you at the upcoming events.
Night.